Welcome everybody. It's so nice to have so many people joining us online tonight. I'm Peter Duncan, one of the administrators at the City of Whittlesea, and our Chair Administrator, Lydia Wilson, is an apology tonight. She really wanted to be here, but she had a conflicting appointment, so I'll be doing the welcome tonight. On behalf of the City of Whittlesea, I would like to recognise the rich Aboriginal heritage of this country and acknowledge the Wurundjeri Willem clan as the traditional owners of this place, and pay my respects to leaders past, present and emerging. So it's also a special thanks to our Council CEO Craig Lloyd for joining us this evening, along with this fantastic and esteemed panellists who I will introduce shortly. We're really excited to welcome you to this online event, the first ahead of our community leadership program, which will be launching fully in 2022. And a big thank you to Deborah Wu from Victorian Local Governance Association, who is joining us tonight, who just introduced me, because you've put a lot of work into producing this tonight's session. So thank you so much for that. The Victorian Local Government Association will have ongoing involvement in our leadership program over the next 4 years. So that's fantastic. And we look forward to working with you across the journey for the 4 years. It's all about making a positive impact at the community level and leading projects that create local change. It's a really rewarding path to take. And I'm just so happy that a lot of you have decided to show interest in this program. And we're hoping that many more people after tonight, when you put the word out around the community, will also be knocking on the door to say, how can I get involved? The program really is for council to be nurturing and building on the considerable resources that we already have in our community and the diversity in our community. And it's just through practical training with that accessibility to a wide range of people. And I just think it's a fantastic opportunity. We want to build the leadership skills across the municipality to nurture leaders from backgrounds that have been perhaps unrepresented in the past. That's really important to us, and this is a great opportunity to get access to a program like this. The community leadership program will be an excellent way to get more involved in council's decision-making processes, and it could enable people to successfully lead community projects or even become a candidate for the local election or both. So get you ready for 2024 when council elections will be back on. So it's a great amount of time to really invest and do something for your community. There are many, many pathways to becoming a local leader, and we really want to give as many residents as possible the chance to get on one of these pathways, particularly as council does prepare for those 2024 council elections, which I just mentioned. What we're trying to do really here is support individuals, no matter where you come from or what you do, to better develop your leadership skills. The program will also ensure that council has a strategic approach to creating a stronger, healthier and more connected place for all. That's really important to the administrators and the council staff. On that note, I really am excited to announce our panellists tonight. And our special guests have come from all over the place, so I really hope you get a lot of enjoyment out of listening to them tonight. So tonight's session will be emceed by Mehek Sheikh, who's the founder of Unconventional Learning. So welcome, Mehek. Councillor Joseph Hawil from the Hume City Council, which is one of our sister brother councils, which is fantastic to have you involved in this. And Nayar Bahandreev, co-founder of the Uja Foundation, welcome. And Councillor Jenna Davey-Burns from the City of Kingston, who has just been elected the Deputy Mayor. So congratulations, Jenna, and I'm sure you'll have a lot to share about your experiences as well, having been just elected the Deputy Mayor. And finally, last but not least, Councillor Greg James from the Greater Shepparton City Council. So you can see there's a diverse municipalities online and different people with different skills. So I really hope you get a lot out of this information evening tonight and pass the word around, and that you really consider applying for the community leadership program that will start, as I said, in 2022. So I'll hand over tonight to our moderator, Mahak, and I really hope you have a great time and just suck it all in, and hopefully we'll see all of you nominating to take part in this program next year. Thank you very much and have a good night.
Thank you so much, Administrator Peter Duncan, for that introduction and for introducing me as well. Welcome, everyone, and hello, good evening. The sun is out, so I have to remind myself it is evening. As mentioned, my name is Mehek, and I will be your moderator for tonight's session. I'm incredibly excited to be here, and I'll tell you why in just a sec. I also want to acknowledge that I'm dialing in today from the Wurundjeri country and pay my respects to elders past, present, and elders and leaders that are yet to come, and just acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Now, why I'm really excited is because I think I am an example of what community leadership programs like the one that we're talking about today does to the community. I am a recipient of being, involved in local council community leadership initiatives and volunteering and all of the things that we know City of Whittlesea is about to launch. I've had an opportunity to take part in things like that, and I would not be sitting here being able to talk to you in this way if that had not happened. So I'm a huge supporter of this work. And I thank all of you for coming along, because that tells me that there is, this interest, this drive, this passion for your community as you're sitting here listening to the panel today. Now, a bit of housekeeping. We're trying to keep tonight super interactive because we know everyone is so tired of just sitting in front of Zoom. So we're going to try and make sure like you've got a chance to say something, to participate in different ways. And we're really keen to hear from everyone in some capacity tonight. There will be opportunities for you to contribute even if you're on the live stream. So if you're not exactly in the room with us tonight, but you're watching the live stream, we still have ways for you to participate tonight. If possible, in the Zoom room with me here, I would love if you can switch on your camera, like no pressure, but it would be so nice to see everyone's face. And as we talk to you and as we hear from the panelists. And also, if you could keep your microphone on mute, unless, we invite you to take it off and share something. And that's, of course, you already know this. We've been in this for 18 months, but we're trying to avoid that background noise and any kind of feedback. All right, so for tonight's event, we will be using a few digital tools. You're very across Zoom, I'm sure. So we will be using Zoom, and we'll be using breakout rooms. So you'll see how that happens when it comes up. But we're also using something called Mentimeter, which I will take you through in a second, and it will just help us, keep that interactivity going and also make sure the event goes pretty smoothly tonight. But before we go into Mentimeter, can you give me like a wave so I know that I'm not stuck, you're not stuck, the internet's working fine? Great. Hi, everyone. Fantastic. Great. So you can now see a shared screen. Yes, thumbs up. Fantastic. One of the tools that we'll be using tonight is called Mentimeter. And we'll be using it a few times in this evening. So I encourage you to actually get onto it right now. You can use your mobile device or your desktop. So if you're joining from a laptop, you can open it on the side on a browser. And you can leave it open throughout the night, and we'll come back to it a few times. So the way you do that is you go to www.menti.com, which is the link at the top of the screen that you can see right now. And you enter the code that you can see. So if you're in the live stream, you can also do this. You don't have to be in the room itself. If at any point you drop off Mentimeter, just do the same thing. Go to www.menti.com and put in the code at the top of the screen. Now, when you've entered the code, you're on the interface. This is where you'll be able to add your answers and respond to the different questions. I can see some people already started doing it. That's awesome. You're like tech savvy. You already know what you're doing. This is fantastic. Again, if you're watching from the live stream, I encourage you to participate as well. If at any point you're having trouble with Mentimeter, put your question in the chat. The people helping us tonight will have all the answers for us. Great. So obviously the first question is, I want to know where you're zooming in from today. Basically click on the one that is most associated or closely located to where you are, so we can get a sense of who is in the room with us. I'll give you like just maybe 25 seconds to do that if you haven't already. Great, we've already got a question. Thank you for asking that question. If you want to get onto Mentimeter, open your browser either on your mobile device or on a laptop, so Google Chrome, or click on the link that's just been put on the chat. Use Internet Explorer if you like, www.menti.com. There will be a page that asks you for a code. In that particular box, you enter the numbers 17842206. And you should get the questions that are asking you where you're from on the screen, as in where are you dialing in from on the screen. That's great. I'm really glad we've got a good spread. We've got a really good spread. We've got a lot of other. Maybe next time we'll put a little option to find out where other is. But a good kind of spread across the suburbs and areas in and around Whittlesea as well. I'm pretty sure we should at least have one person from Bandura, South Morang, and Beveridge. I will give you a second. Show yourselves now. Where are you in this room or on the live stream? Fantastic. Now you know how to use Mentimeter. Keep that on your screen wherever it is. We'll come back to it throughout the night. Also at about 7:10, we will be going into Zoom breakout rooms. I will give you instructions of what happens then, but that's the other kind of major tool that we'll be using tonight. Now, the next question on Mentimeter is, we want to know what brings you here tonight and what you're hoping to gain from this conversation. What would you like to learn? There will be an opportunity for you to ask detailed questions later on to the panelists. But for now, I'd just, again, love to get a sense of like, what are the things that you that drew you to signing up tonight, and again put it in the Mentimeter chat. Again, if you're live streaming and you're not in the Zoom room, you can also participate in this part. So take a minute to share what brings you here tonight and what are you hoping to get out of it. I know I am hoping to get a bit of a sense of the diverse experiences in leadership that the panelists are bringing. I might read a couple as they're coming through as well, just so we get a sense. Some people are here to, like me, hear about the experiences of the speakers in leadership. Some people are here to connect with other leaders. That's fantastic. You know, like this is just the beginning of your leadership journey and connecting with other leaders. So I'm really glad that you're here. We've also got to improve leadership skills, to get more insight about leadership, to become familiar with local leadership. That's also a fantastic idea. If you know who in the community is, you know, doing the moving and the shaking and the getting people together and the excited, passionate people, you can get behind them. So I love that you're here for that as well. I'll read a couple more. To find out more about the leadership program, great. This is a great first step to doing that. There will be heaps of other information coming out, and I hope that you, whoever wrote that, are able to participate in some of those opportunities. A couple of similar ones, which is great. Enhanced community engagement. Ooh, I think I read that correctly before it went up. These are really fantastic responses. I am very excited to know that we're all sharing a similar kind of vision of why we're here, which means we'll have very similar conversations and we'll be able to bounce off and get energy from each other as we talk about leadership tonight. So we'll stop the screen share for now, but it won't go away from your devices. It's still there. So, you know, throughout the night, you can continue to add different comments to the questions that come up, and we will bring it back on our screens at different points again in the night as we explore leadership together. So now it's time to introduce our panel. I might ask each of you, you are now pinned on screen, you're pinned on my screen, so hopefully everyone can see you. Give us a wave just so I know the internet's all good. Yep, fantastic. So I will ask each of you to introduce yourselves and specifically tell us about your journey in that introduction to leadership in community and in local government. How did you get involved and what's been the most rewarding so far? It's a bit of a big question, but I'm hoping you can give us an introduction in that. I might start with Councillor Joseph. You're first on my screen.
Thank you very much, Mehek. And the VLGA in Whittlesea for organising this. Good evening, everyone. Very good to be with you all. My name is Joseph Hawil. I'm a Hume City Councillor and have served on Hume City Council since 2016, so 2 terms now. I just finished up my first term as Mayor of the city in the last year, and then continuing on council for the next few years. Well, I mean, the question is, why get involved in local government? But for me, the elements go one step before that, which is being involved in community. One of the problems that I think we have in local government and at local government elections in particular is that there are a whole range of candidates who seem to think that their first foray into community involvement is running for council. Those candidates never win elections, or very, very rarely. Those candidates that do win elections are those who are embedded, involved and active in community for many, many years before. They have the contacts, networks, associations through a whole range of different factors. And for me, personally, that really started with active community work in the Hume area, obviously probably from about 15 years of age, through a range of charitable, religious, social and cultural groups and associations. I come from a sort of long line of people who have suffered for the community, that is being actively involved in community work. And I think that for me, I'm a sort of conviction type of person. I try and do the things I do on that sort of ethical basis or on the basis of my values. And those certainly come from my family, who for decades before me were very actively involved in the community. And I have tried as best I can to follow in their footsteps, particularly those of my father. So for me, that really was very much the start of active community work. And then the second element really is in some ways being tired of advocating in from the outside to decision makers and wanting to have a seat at the decision-making table and shape public policy. And that's certainly why I put my hand up. At a very granular level, Mehek, I was sick of Hume City Council's approach to managing infringements. And I was sick of narrow streets, which is also linked to that. I think that's a lived reality for many people, and every area and municipality will have its own distinct localized issues. Understanding those issues is also critical to being successful in community leadership and then being elected to council. The last thing I'll say, Mehek, is that in my view, community leadership, active leadership, is not only achieved through being an elected official. In fact, very few people will end up being elected officials. There is a tremendous amount of very, very important work done by unsung heroes in our communities every single day. And that really is the core of starting and understanding leadership, and then hopefully, if people are interested in elected office, moving on to that great honour of doing that at an elected level.
Thank you so much, Councillor Joseph. I have a few things to point out, but before I do, from what you've said, I will ask Councillor Greg to share with us as well.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me here. And can I start by acknowledging traditional owners and also acknowledge my elders, both past, present and emerging. Acknowledge non-Indigenous participants here tonight, and also acknowledge people from other cultural backgrounds too as well. My journey, my life, my journey, amazing. I have, the strength of my elders and my people and my mob behind me. That provided the impetus and the guiding for me to stand. And I'm a very proud Yorta Yorta man, and the history of Yorta Yorta Nations is a fantastic leaders in my country. William Cooper and Jack Patton and all of these, and Pastor Doug Nichols. So I guess from my point of view, it's ingrained in my blood for me to lead. And that was the catalyst for me, I guess. My journey to leadership started when I completed my teaching degree, and that sort of provided me with the motivation and a platform, I guess, to teach, and also the opportunity to demonstrate and engage in conversations about my magnificent culture and the history, the journeys of my ancestors, and the hard work and the dogged resistance that they did back in the 1920s when the government threw draconian policies at our mob, and they stood there and offered the resistance. And that is my legacy, and I can feel the weight of my, the ancestors behind me and pushing me and saying, you are now the keeper of that, and you are carrying the wisdom of our ancestors with you to the future. So the history, the journey of my ancestors, my tribe, and what the future should look like. Well, I'm really honoured that I'm in a position to actually shape that from here onwards. And I guess the need for the elders was simply, it is time. That was the message I got from my elders. It's time. The community are changing, attitudes are changing. We have a younger generation that is acceptance of Indigenous culture and First Nations people. We only look at the non-Indigenous participations in Stolen Generations in NAIDOC weeks, and also the pushes for, and I'm really excited and honoured with the number of councils that are changing the Australia Day, because Australia Day, as we all know, it's not a day for celebration for a mob, but there are ways that we change that in actually small incremental changes rather than big massive change. So the need for the elders was simply, as I say, it's time for us to change, a time for us to have a voice and to have a First Nations persons involved in the peak decision-making process, I guess. To have one to create a pathway for our future generations. And that's the part that really excites me. My journey from here onwards, as from my point of view, is to open up the door and to have our young Indigenous leaders, for me to create this pathway for our young Indigenous leaders to follow my journey and to continue on in that leadership. I was appointed to council last year, and as the first Indigenous person in 140 years of our local region. So I'm very honoured to be in that position. And there's only 2 of us out of the 790 councillors in Victoria. So I get strength in that legacy from little things, big things grow. And my journey will be, although there's a lot of pressure on me, as me and my fellow colleague, Indigenous woman Ashley Vanderberg from the Shire of Melton. But I absolutely love that challenge. I love being in this position and looking forward to working with VLGA and also MAV in the Victorian government in regards to me being that champion and being that voice to say it's so important to have Indigenous voices on local government. And my aspirations, I'm using this as a stepping stone to go further. I'm not going to leave it here. I've got lots and lots that I want to do and what I achieve. And this is the start.
Thanks for sharing. And I get so much of inspiration hearing about how much ancestral strength there is, and that we can carry on, or you've carried on, and it's coming in the next generation as well, perhaps, which is also the theme, I guess, to some extent I got from you, Joseph, in the role modeling is so important in leadership, right? To be able to see our elders, our ancestors be leaders means that as young people, I can speak for myself as well, it makes a huge difference to know that leadership is something that is actionable, that I can take part in. I also just really want to quickly point out, I love that both of you spoke about community and how community backs you. Leadership is not a solo journey at all, is what I got the sense from your dialogue. And, it's something that we do in cohesion with other people, and without the community, then what is the leadership really? So thank you for sharing that. Nayana, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me clearly? Okay, great. My name is Nana Bhandari, and I'm an Indian origin migrant, and I came to Australia 13 years ago. I'm a co-founder of Urja Foundation, which is a not-for-profit community organization based in city of Hume and Whittlesea. And through the foundation, we try to support many new arrival and settling migrants, majorly from Indian background, but South Asian, I can say overly. And apart from that, I work as a community engagement officer at a Catholic school, and I'm a co-producer for Gita documentary. In terms of leadership, I'll see it in a very different way. And I'm really fortunate because it's a kind of a very formal discussion for me, because I'm the only non-consular or non-consul person in the panel. But I would really like to enjoy the fact that for me, leadership is always independent of your provision. For me, leadership is very much issue-based and community-focused, and that is my catalyst to be in community. When I came in Australia within my first year, I observed a lot of gaps, especially from a migrant background. As a migrant, it's so hard to find a job. It's so hard to establish yourself, and especially if you are a woman, how the system doesn't really let you to seep it into the culture. And eventually that became my area of interest, and that helped me actually to lead on to this path. And up to now, I able to work with more than 10,000 community members through different fronts, projects, and avenues. And I would say that my strength with time has helped me actually to find out more gaps and identify more issues within the community, whether it is related with family violence or it is related with any of the newly arrived community-based concerns. I would say that identifying gap is one of the main factor for me. That's one of the main area of interest for me, and how we can do an advocacy around that issue, and with the cultural appropriate lens, because with time we have seen all the communities has been grown here, but there were not that much culturally appropriate lens available in terms of identifying those gaps. So how we can include those lens and those understanding, and develop the capacity of our community members, make them the partner on this journey of community awareness, empowerment, and let them lead the community. Absolutely. So I just enjoy my process of being one of the community member with community, and I'm just enjoying it and leading on to it. Thank you.
So good. Thank you so much, Nayan. And you spoke like a true leader, empower the community, speak capacity, build for the community, let the community lead. Exactly how I guess I would like leadership to speak when I hear it. So thank you for sharing that. Jenna?
Thank you so much. And I too will acknowledge the traditional lands that I'm on, the Bunurong and the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation, and pay respects to elders past and present. I've been really looking forward to this session. It's a bit of a highlight this week, and it's lovely to hear the stories of the other panelists. And thank you to those of you who have your camera on. I have just spent a little bit of time going through and having a little look to get to know who's here. So it's really, really lovely to meet you. I guess one of my immediate reflections is that leadership for me is not something static. It's something that you start doing in lots of different ways in your life, and you are constantly striving every day to achieve that type of leadership. And I think my first act of leadership was on Jajawarren country in Bendigo, where I was born, to convince my younger brother to jump out of a tree into the creek at the back of our property. And he did, and it was a lot of fun. Little reminder there about vision and joy, and a little bit of courage that it takes to step up to be a leader and get people to believe in you and put their faith in you. After I left Bendigo, I moved to Melbourne. I was really lucky to grow up in a family of incredibly strong women. So I was taught from a young age with brothers and growing up in the country with strong women not to take no for an answer. And I think that has served me really well. I've always known that I can do everything because that's the kind of family that I grew up in. And I guess one of my biggest reflections when I was looking at the panel briefing before we came in tonight was actually thinking that it takes courage to put yourself forward, and that's what it takes to become a leader. And last year, when I put myself up for local council, following the Pathways to Politics Melbourne University leadership program for women, I really thought there are a lot of incredible women out there, and I bet there are some right here on this Zoom call with us who just need to know that don't take no for an answer, and believe in yourself and back yourself and step up. So I guess I just wanted to sort of frame that. Going back to how I ended up in local government, I spent my early years doing criminology and gender studies at Melbourne University, and I then went and worked overseas for the UN for a little while and decided that I wanted to continue working locally here in Australia, and came back and spent some time working with Black Saturday bushfire survivors, and then followed through with some work with the Victorian Multicultural Commission, and then in the Aboriginal legal sector. And throughout that, I really, I worked at both ends. Sometimes I was in the community doing work right at that very kind of micro human-centered level. And then other times I was in government, quite far removed from things, writing policy and thinking about how that would be enacted. And then I realized that there's also another opportunity to create social change, which is the big key driver for me. And that was stepping up into a leadership role to actually be really effective in bringing together the community, bringing together the policymakers and driving that force together. And that was what really excited me about running for council. And I did also, at the last Pathways to Politics dinner, stand up and pledge that I'd run. So when the council elections came around, the cohort reminded me that I promised that I would run. And so here I am. So I might leave it there, but that's sort of just some early introductions to me.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Jenna. And it's been really lovely to watch your journey from not too far away from you. I think I may be like 40 minutes away, and just cheer on like the journey that you and many other kind of women in leadership have been going on since last year's election. So good to hear about that. Now I've got a couple of questions to ask the panel, but I invite you to the audience members to put your questions in the chat as they come up, as you think of them. There will be a chance for us to do a bit of like voting on those questions. I'll take you through that a bit later, and we'll ask the panel some of these other questions as well a bit later on. But my first question, and I might actually divide them up so I get some different perspectives, but my first question is maybe to Councillor Greg and Nayana. I'm curious to hear your reflections on how can we diversify leadership? What does a diverse, quote unquote, diverse council or leadership look like to you? Maybe Greg first.
I'm very lucky and very fortunate to live in a community where we have a very large multicultural community and a great mixture and I guess a combination of First Nations people and people from both sort of pre and post-war immigrations to where we have now is our new wave of migrants to our regional area. We talk about diversity, and it is absolutely the birthing ground of diversity is here in the regional area. And it's a great blend, and it's a great mixture and acceptance of cultures, and one which I'm very fortunate to be involved in and involving the many cultures in our community, because I see it as a bit of a unity in regards to the way that we walk together and we associate together. And I think that by doing that, involving our First Nations culture with people from other cultural backgrounds, it sends a really clear and some positive messages out to our community. I'm very fortunate with my fellow councillors that I do have other councillors from cultural backgrounds too as well. That does indicate the breadth and the strength of our community and the richness, I guess. But having diverse communities, I think the strength in that is about building partnerships and forming partnerships. From Indigenous First Nations point of view, we have a very strong and active Aboriginal community here and the local cooperative, which and it's a real positive model of reconciliation. Just one example, we have Rumbalara, I'm referring to our Aboriginal cooperative. Well, we have 270 staff employed at our organisation, which I'm chairperson of. But out of that 270, we have 130 that are non-Indigenous people, which consist of people from various cultural backgrounds. So that is a perfect model of reconciliation, which I highlight as a shining example in our community on how, good partnerships, good relationships, and goodwill does show that it does work, and it will work. With my position on council now has sent a clear message to our community, and the message came from the community to say, yes, we need Indigenous representation on our community, on our panel, at that election point of view, because the time is right. But it also has given me now the position to to be now in a position from what was tokenistic before becomes a realistic position now, because I'm actually there. So I'm overseeing, making sure that our social justice issues and a connection with our community is now ingrained and entrenched right across council's operations, but also within our broader constituency. Diversity is a great word. I love that word, and I think it sums up our community, which are gone from a very much a multicultural community toward what I call now as a cosmopolitan community, which I think is very encompassing and captures people from all cultural backgrounds, including European culture too as well. But I'm on that. My main focus in my position as a teacher, of course, to say to all of our students and all of our people to say, Aboriginal history, Australia's history is Aboriginal history, and vice versa. And the more that we emphasise that, we have some impacts on curriculum. We make those changes at curriculum, but we come back and we do the truth telling, and we do involve Aboriginal people in rewriting the history. And I think we do that. We have a chance of doing that because our oral history has not been represented in a descriptive history. So lots and lots to do, but very excited in the way we do that. But diversity is the absolute ingredients for your community.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you touched on a couple of things that have caught my attention in that. The difference is that, you know, it's not tokenistic. It's like you actually have influence and in that leadership, and that's what makes it you know, true diverse leadership, not just like a tick box leadership opportunity. So yeah, thank you for that. Nayana, to you as well, a similar question of you know, your reflections on how we diversify leadership, and what should our councils or our leadership boards look like if we are all empowered and franchised?
I'll very much agree with what Councillor Greg has mentioned, that our history is an integral part, and it should be considered and it should be taken forward in every way possible. And I think in our council or any of the local boards, I think the local residents should be reflected. Because it won't be good, like, you know, if we talk about diversity, but when we talk about having, like, you know, our panel, there won't be anyone from diverse community. So it will be same, like, you know, ticking up the boxes, but not working exactly onto those fronts. So our council should be reflective of our residents, and it should also think about, like, you know, the diversity of persons and the diversity of skills. Like, there should be someone who represent art, someone who should know about history, someone who is an expert in infrastructure. Because somehow, if we have those brains on panel, those brains sitting together, that will help not only just to share innovative ideas, but also help other branching grown communities to grow and develop those interests. So it's all about, like, you know, having a combination, having same like having a dinner with diverse food variety spread on the table. That gives us the choice, that helps us to build a more I can say by visibly and by mentally make us more happy. So it's about giving that opportunity to everyone, and it should be considering on the basis of gender, cultural background, how we can make them all inclusive, how we can have everyone on board.
Absolutely. And I totally agree. If I don't feel like my experiences are reflected, then I don't feel like the person who is in leadership is, you know, advocating for the issues that I'm facing or the issues that I care about. So 100% agree with that. Thank you. Councillor Joseph and Councillor Jenna, my question to you is slightly different, but I guess related to some extent. Do you have advice on how community members from all backgrounds, what can they do if they're unsure about how to harness their influence? And you've spoken about getting involved in, like, you know, local community activities, which you both have done. But yeah, can we like unpack that a bit more? Maybe we start with Councillor Jenna.
I guess I want to frame this, though, within the understanding that there are structural barriers in the way of some of our community leaders stepping up. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that up front, because despite a lot of efforts for many people, obtaining leadership roles can be really difficult, and overcoming those hurdles can be really, really challenging. I'm thinking about the numbers of women who run for local government, for example, and my concern within that number of women, how representative, as we've just talked about, those women are of the broader community. Because I think, as our colleagues have said previously, that you really need to see that kind of leadership to be able to know that it's available to you and that you can step up. And one of the things that I've been advocating a lot for recently, as someone who's a newly emerging company director, I've been serving on the Queen Victoria Women's Centre Trust for about 5 years, and I've just recently completed the AICD course, is that we need more pathways, and that those pathways are actually the responsibility of the people who hold the structural power. So one of the things that I've asked for with the trust and with the Gender Equality Advisory Council for Local Government that I sit on, is that we start to consider ways in which we can have shadow leadership roles. So we could have a shadow trust. We could have suggested we have shadow councillors, opportunities for people to actually transform their leadership from what they're experiencing in the community, as Joseph has talked about, that community leadership role, because I know that there are a lot of our community who do that role. But then when it comes to those formal qualifications or that experience, there's been many barriers in the way that have prevented people from transforming and igniting their leadership. So providing those formalized structures and those opportunities for people to step up and to actually carve out space, I think, is absolutely critical. I think we do need to structurally have a structural review of the way our systems of power are set up. Thinking about local government, thinking about single parents. When I was running, I was a single foster parent with 3 children. Everyone found Zoom and the pandemic really tricky. I loved it. I'd put the kids to bed and campaign from 9 p.m. till midnight. And that was how I got things done. I wouldn't have actually been able to have run and campaign as effectively if I was expected to be at every event in person, because I wouldn't have been at home with my foster children. So I think, there's so much that I want to unpack, and I don't want to take up too much of Joseph's time, but just really to speak to the importance of those who hold the power, and particularly people who have cracked that door open, like myself as a woman, to then create that space behind me for other people to come through.
Absolutely. And again, speaks to that idea that leadership is not that solo journey. It's the community gets you there, but then you have to get the community to the next level with the pathways that have been made accessible to you. Thank you for sharing that. Councillor Joseph?
I'll just a quick word on the previous question you asked. I know that they're all interlinked, but I think a hard truth is the fact that in terms of cultural diversity or diversity in general, this country's political structures systematically are not diverse. We have the least culturally diverse political system in the Western world, led by our colleagues in New Zealand, Canada, the United States, and even America. The halls of power are mostly Anglo-Celtic and mostly white, and I'm sorry to put these comments in those very blunt terms, but it's just a fact, a reality of the structures in our country. And so the question then goes on to what do we do to try and make these halls of power and decision-making and leadership opportunities accessible? For me, 90% of anything is showing up. There are a whole range of community leadership programs, activities that come up all the time. And I completely agree with Jenna that those that were very much in-person attendance and intensive have now shifted to online and are becoming far more accessible to people who may not have been able to access them. I think that people who do make it to be representatives like me and others, again, agree with Jenna, have a responsibility to fund, support, and put those programs in place. That's something that I've tried to do at Hume. We have a range of programs and an expansion of community leadership programs from a community development, from an environmental, from a range of perspectives. And those are opportunities that people should really embrace. So much of everything I've found is about having those networks and connections to people who will be able to share with you those opportunities that exist and support you. I know that for many people, it's daunting walking into a room, for example, where you may not know anyone. I think of going to a party. You're not going to just go to a party by yourself. The first thing you're going to think about is, gosh, who am I going to go with? How am I going to get there? What are they wearing? What am I going to wear? This is the natural part of the human condition. The same goes for leadership opportunities. If one wants to go and participate in one, you're always going to think, hey, do I just walk into a room? It's very hard to just walk up to someone and say, hey, I want to be a leader. But for me, very much it's understanding that leadership is a journey, and that those skills to be a leader are built up as you participate in various opportunities and build networks with like-minded people. And through those opportunities and networks, then it provides that opportunity for, say, a higher level leadership, being on a board, for example, being elected to council, or even dreaming bigger, as Greg was referring to before, perhaps at a higher level of decision making.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that idea of, like, you know, just like 90% of everything is to show up or to just turn up, is what a mentor once told me when I was like probably 60, and they were like, just turn up and you'll see what happens. And that's it's something I, you know, stick to today, and I turn up to things and resonate with that idea that sometimes you're not actually in a title, a leadership title or a role, but all the activities you're doing are building the skills where you act upon being a leader every time anyway.
Heck, my problem is I turn up to too many things and drown in them, so I have to go the other direction.
So learn to say no and take care of yourself as well is a great leadership skill.
That's right.
Well, thank you for sharing. We are now actually going to move into a really short break, just have a stretch for like 3 minutes if you need to. When we come back, we'll be going into breakout rooms and I'll explain what happens then. Also, your Mentimeter is still on. So in between now and when we return from breakout rooms a bit later on, feel free to put questions in. But you can basically, if you're on live stream, you can also continue to put questions in that you're thinking about. We're going to pause the live stream for now, and we'll be back in about 20 minutes or so. So like 7:30, 7:20 on live stream. But otherwise, take a couple of minutes to have a stretch. I know sitting in front of the screen is not easy. I will call us back at 7:20 to kick off again. Oh, welcome back. I was caught in a deep conversation, so I needed the prompt to come back. I would have forgot the time. Basically, that's how good conversations are, right, in the small groups. Welcome back, everyone. Now, if you were a scribe in your little group, I ask you to maybe share those reflections or the key message that you talked about in the chat. If you didn't get a chance to assign a scribe, then just put down your key reflection that you had and you shared in your breakout rooms into the chat right about now. Great. So the question that I got for our panel, so we're going back into a bit of a moderation space, is what key things about leadership do you wish you knew earlier in your journey? I'm going to ask that question to Greg and Jenna. I can't see you on my screen, but I think you're here. Maybe if we could start with you, Greg. What are some key things about leadership that you wish you knew earlier?
What are the key things about leadership do you wish you knew earlier in your journey? It's an interesting question. One that I've always probably grappled with that in regards to my lead up of my campaign, is to say, what would I want to know about leadership which will actually empower my community? I guess that I looked at that as for me, on a self-reflection on me and how I conduct myself during my campaign and how I conduct myself in the community, is about, you as a person, you need to show some leadership. You need to make sure that you conduct yourself in a way which it not only projects your culture, but how you are as a human being and how you conduct yourself in your community. The key things about leadership, which I think I probably would have named, was say, what pathways are in place, what protection are in place for me from my cultural integrity and my cultural worth, and also about me being in a space where I am as one little dark-skinned coloured person and First Nations person in a room full of environment which is predominantly run by non-Indigenous people. What sort of leadership protection will I have from not only from my colleagues, but what protection and leadership will I get from my own mob? And I guess that was evident for me, because when I when I tallied up my votes, well, I had something like, well, I ended up with about 5,500 votes, which I was completely blown away with. And a lot of majority of my votes came from non-Indigenous people, because given my small Indigenous population in my town,
Yeah.
I knew that I had to rely on not my Indigenous community to get me over the line. I had to rely on the general community. So I was quite blown away by the support from non-Indigenous people towards voting me in that position. So I guess my understanding or my thoughts around about what would be, I knew about earlier. I guess I already had my mind made up about that. And I had a lot of mythology about, about the fear of failure, I guess, was probably the one thing that I thought of in the start, to say, well, if I don't get in, I feel as though I'm failing my community, because they're missing, they're not having a leadership person in that position. So I guess I was a little bit worried about not getting into the position, and therefore what would be the responsibilities, and how then can we then continue to rally for Indigenous issues at that level.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for that response. Jenna?
Thanks. I think my reflection would be just how possible leadership actually is. And I'm so glad that I stopped waiting to try and step up. I think, as Greg's spoken about, that fear of failure that you carry either personally or for your community is something that is a heavy weight. And when you remove that shackle and you step up, you realize just how possible leadership can be when you back yourself. And that was a big thing that I really learned over the last 12 months. The other thing that I wish I'd known is just how practical it is, or you need to be in terms of campaigning. And Ruth McGowan's book, How to Get Elected, was by my bedside, and I would read little chapters. And I think it was one of the most important things in my campaign. Jacinda Ardern's book was similarly very helpful as a half Kiwi. I was reading with much interest what her campaigning looked like. And so I think understanding that leadership can be broken down. It can be so overwhelming when you think about trying to step up, that it is actually little pieces that you start to put together, and you pull together those threads of your life, those people in the community that you know, and as Greg said, the people in the community that you don't know, but you reach out to and ask for them, for their support, for their commitment and your commitment to them. So I think that was something that was became really apparent to me, was that idea of really thinking about all of the steps that you need to take to get there. And it's very easy to do. You just got to break it down and not be overwhelmed.
Can you really quickly, maybe in just like 30 seconds, I know it's a bit of a challenge, break it down a little bit for us in terms of what some of those steps are that you're talking about?
For campaigning?
And for leadership, I suppose.
Yeah, sure. I think the first one is having a really strong base. So having people who are around you to support you, and that is both in terms of setting your direction and keeping you on track. You need your inner circle who keep you on your true north and also support you when times get tough. And then that broader community support. Joseph spoke really well before about that sense of the broader community. You need to be out there doing that work. The second thing around that is obviously opportunity. So you need to know how to knock on doors, and when you hear a no, appreciate that that's not the right time for you, but you keep knocking on that door. I think the third thing is financial support. So if you're struggling with full-time work, perhaps thinking about what are the leadership opportunities available to you in the evening, on the weekend. Maybe it's mentoring, talking to other leaders, exploring all avenues. So I think, I don't know if that's 30 seconds, but just to try and break it down into 3 rings for you.
No, that's awesome. Very, I give you a hard challenge. You basically break down entire leadership into steps. But no, thank you for those. Those are some really key takeaways that, if you're listening in the audience, that you can think about. And it doesn't only apply to just, running for council, but that idea of building a base and looking for opportunities and knocking on the door of opportunities applies regardless of that, I guess, direction that you take. Maybe the next question I will ask is to you, Joseph, is, and tell me if you don't feel comfortable with this one, but I think you would be okay to answer this. How is community leadership different to partisan politics? And you can talk about your experience pre council stuff as well. So,
well, look, I mean, talking post-council, we have to accept that council is a political environment. Any elected office is a political environment, and there is partisan politics involved in it. In the Victorian state context, and this differs from state to state, the greatest number of independents are elected in local government because we don't have that strictly partisan political ticket or branding system as much in this state as it exists in other states. For example, in New South Wales, they have the option in their current council elections to be held on the 4th of December of above the line voting as a ticket, as you would vote in the Senate. And so for me, local government is certainly a very representative body because it provides that opportunity for people from a diverse cohort in our society to get elected. Community leadership has politics as well. Yes, it may not be partisan in the sense that it is party political, but I tell you what, I've seen more politics in local sporting club committees or a neighbourhood house committee than I have seen on some councils. And I think that we have to be prepared for that, but understand understand the venue that we're in, and when I say venue, the forum really that we're in, and what it is that we're trying to achieve. I see that other question there where someone has asked about servant leadership, and that's a very important concept to me, something that I like to be guided by. And I think that for anyone who is in a community leadership position, they need to be linking themselves up to that concept of servant leadership to then avoid the partisan politics that comes. And for me, that is that when I sit down and make decisions, and at the end of the day, elected councillors, if anyone asks what's their role, I boil it down to making decisions. By and large, that's what we do. It's to remember that we're not there to serve the partisan political interests of any group, but in fact to serve the people from which we derive the power where we sit. And coming to every decision, understanding that this decision has a real, not being desensitized to decision making, understanding that each decision has may have a significant impact on the lives of people, but remembering the very people that put you in the position to enable you to make those decisions.
Absolutely. Sounds like, again, keeping yourself in check and remembering how you got to essentially where you are with whichever leadership journey you go on. I'm going to ask one final question to you, Nayana. What barriers have you faced when championing matters related to diversity and systemic change?
I would say that I have faced many challenges, and I think they're ongoing. Well, it depends upon which stage of leadership you are, or which change of that phase you are in your life. Definitely being from a migrant background, that was my biggest challenge because, and especially I think the issues which I've been vocal about, whether it's in regards to family violence, because I'm a passionate advocate for issue of family violence, and I have worked a lot with many of migrant organizations, and how to how to involve that understanding in service sectors, how to involve that understanding in a local community about a migrant women going through family violence challenges in comparison to any other victim was, I would say, one of my biggest advocacy around. And I think in any of the new phases where you touch on, you have to, leadership is never easy. It involves a lot of hard work and commitment. And if you pick on an issue which is new to the community, it definitely takes a lot of time. And you have to be ready with it. You have to be really hardworking. There is no shortcut for leadership. There is no shortcut if you believe that social media might help you in sorting out the real life issues in life. I don't believe into that. So I would say it's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing journey, and you have to be really ready for it. You really need to be strong in yourself if you want to walk on this journey.
Yeah. And just a quick follow-up to that, if you could give us the sort of one strategy that you use to overcome that barrier, like what is it that you put in place for yourself to be able to still continue your journey?
All right. I would say 2 words: commitment and focus.
That's great. Great one to remember. If you forget anything from the session tonight, remember commitment and focus. Thank you for that. Now we are coming towards the end of the night. We've only got about 10 minutes left together. So I'm going to ask, firstly, I'm so sorry we can't get through all the questions. I know there was a few others, and I hope that they were answered in the ways, in some of the things that the panelists have already shared. But I'm really sorry that we couldn't get through all of them. The last part of tonight is I would like to invite you, the audience, to share again on Mentimeter on your screens. What are your key takeaways from tonight? What are some things you're going to do after hearing and feeling inspired and excited by this panel tonight? And while you pop that in, I love it. Commitment and focus is already stuck as a slogan. It's working, Nayana. But I'd love to hear some closing remarks from the panelists. Could you give us kind of, the one key, message that you want to leave with emerging community leaders who are in this room today? And I'll start with you, Councillor Greg.
Oh, look, I think I like what Jenna said earlier. You continue. Don't take no for an answer. I take solace and I take strength from my ancestors when I look back on their journey. And I'm just amazed at their resistance back then, what was thrown at them, and they stood. And that's why our culture is so alive and so strong now, is because they simply said no. They put up that resistance for those draconian policies that were thrown at them, awful policies. And I think you adopt that philosophy to say, no, take no as an answer and keep probing questions. And I like before, one of the things was passion to make changes, passion to be bold and brave, but also passion to enter into uncomfortable environments and engage in conversations. And I think you have to have a passion. It's what drives us to stand for these positions. And passion is built around a number of philosophical goals that you want to do, but also about you as a person and how you carry yourself into the future and what you want to do and what you want to achieve. Set yourself some tasks on what you want to do, but maintain your passion in everything you do and do not take no for an answer. And I love what Jenna said, and that's my philosophy. If I will not say no, and I'll keep posing questions. And if I continue to say no, I'll say, well, why isn't it happening? Why can't we do this? And I think, but the passion is what you've got to maintain, that passion, and keep the drive and be bold and brave. That's my motto.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a really good one for, again, to remember. There are these keywords, audience members, that you can take away, bold and brave and passion and commitment and focus that will keep you going on this journey. So thank you for sharing. Councillor Jenna?
Thank you. And I think for new and emerging leaders, I guess the things that I would say are, firstly, believe in yourself and know that all of us that are on the screen today started with a little dream, and this is where we are, and we're all going further places. So all on that continuum of leadership. So believe in yourself and set those goals, as Greg has just said. Make it really real. Talk to the people in your inner circle and be accountable. Show up to yourself, because it's really easy for those little fears to get in the way, for life to get in the way. If you have children, if you have family commitments, or you have other things going on in your life, you've got work, it's easy sometimes just to go, look, that's a bit hard, and not yet. And next year will be the right time, and I'll run then, or I'll step up into that leadership role next year. Make it now and start now. I think setting those goals for yourself and making it really real is important. I think also supporting one another. I've been really lucky to be surrounded by incredible mentors, but also other people on the leadership journey. So make sure that you collect those people, bring them into your life, and help support one another, because it's incredible. Just one quick little story was around a woman that I met on Pathways to Politics was also campaigning in the nearby municipality. And during her campaign, she and her husband went out letterboxing for me because we were in the 5K lockdown.
Yeah.
And that meant the world to me. So that's what you could be for someone in this group.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Councillor Joseph?
Well, I'll make it simple. Have clarity about what you're trying to achieve. Don't shy away from getting involved despite the challenges. Reach out to people and seek advice, guidance, mentorship from experienced people in the community and around you. And I think that's been a very big theme of what everyone has said tonight. Don't be disheartened by obstacles and challenges, because at the end of the day, nothing is ever insurmountable. And also remember that no leader, those who've come before you, made it to where they are easily. They didn't just appear out of thin air. Leadership is tough. It takes years, it takes time, it takes dedication, and it certainly has ups and downs, but it's all about sticking to it. And the final thing really is going back to what I said before about leadership being 90% of it being showing up, because really very often very few people will pursue leadership. Very few people will put up their hand to support others. Very few people will put up their hand to go out of their way and take from their time to try and make a difference. It's those people that do, which end up making that difference and being successful. And I'd encourage people to do that.
Great. Thank you so much. Great reflections. And Nayana, to you, what are your key messages, closing remarks for tonight?
I would say never underestimate your potential, because you only know your capacity. You only set barriers for you, and you only know how to open those barriers and go up to the limits. So just don't underestimate your potential. Believe in yourself. You can achieve, you can reach up to whatever extent you want, and just go, just keep on trying.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. These are really great takeaways. And, I'm getting excited to do my next leadership, thing, whatever it is, whatever the universe throws at me, in small and big ways. If it's to run for council that you want to do, then go ahead and do that. Or if it's to turn up for someone else who is, taking a leadership step, that as well is leadership. Because again, if we go right back to the beginning of where we started, we said, leaders come with their communities, and also give back to the communities. And it's this two-way stream. So thank you to an excellent panel. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you tonight and moderating with you. Thank you to the audience. Just before you go, we have one final Mentimeter thing that we would love for you to do. On the next, on the scale, or it's on your screen already, on a scale of 1 to 5, please let us know if you feel like you've, gained or learned something about leadership from tonight's session, about harnessing your own influence, and also tell us from a scale of 1 to 10 if you will. Oh, that was very cool. It went to 5 very quickly. But tell us if you will come again to these events, if you will tell a friend about these events. We would love to know. I'm sure City of Whittlesea would like to, and the OGA would like to create more experiences that are tailored to your liking. So so please take a second to tell us how you feel about that. Also, thank you to all of you listening on the live stream in the Zoom room with me here today for coming along and spending 2 full hours with us. It demonstrates your dedication. You have turned up, you have showed up and so you're already leaders. I have certainly gained a lot from being here this evening, and I look forward to, cheerleading your journey as you become community leaders. That's all from me tonight, and I will hand over to Deborah to close off.
Thanks so much, Mehek. And thank you so much to our panel of incredible councillors and community leaders. And that's obviously those intersecting terms as we heard tonight. In particular, I would really like to thank Nayana for coming along and saying yes, even though I threw her in the deep end with all the councillors. But yeah, thank you for all of you, for all of your generosity and wisdom of spirit. I just really enjoyed hearing from all of you, and I'm sure all of our participants did as well today. So a little bit about the VLGA. I'm conscious that we haven't really spoken about us as an organisation at all. We're the Victorian Local Governance Association, and we're an independent governance association that supports councils and councillors in good governance. And really for us, that means that we want to assist you as candidates, as community members, to harness your influence and your leadership, as well as support our councillors to be the best that they can be. So thank you so much for coming again. We really hope that the conversation tonight has sparked some interest for you in the potential of leading change through local government, whether it's as someone who gets involved through advisory committees, comes on to council meetings, even runs. And don't forget that the City of Whittlesea are launching a community leadership program in 2022. I know that all of you are wanting to find out more about that, and I promise you that there will be more information on the City of Whittlesea's website soon. Hannah's just popped a link in the chat to sign up to our community leadership e-news, and there will be more information coming up. And there'll be some community leadership development and targeted training for people who want to be involved at a local level and people who also want to be involved at a civic level and potentially run or support someone else to run. So if you go on to the webpage, whittlesea.vic.gov.au/leading change, and that link is in the chat as well. Sign up to that e-news list and you will get all of the updates. So thank you so much for coming, everyone. We're only 1 minute over time, but yeah, thank you again. And I'm sorry we didn't get to all of your questions. We'll try and find out a creative solution for that with the panel. Thanks, everyone.